This is the Mediate Now with Winter Wheeler. Your clear choice for expert mediation and negotiation advice. But it's so much more than that. Take our advice, you will improve your entire life. Are you ready? Let's get to it. Amy Stewart has expertise in resolving contract disputes, business torts, investigations, products liability, employment, and labor matters. In addition to her civil trial experience, Amy is a certified arbitrator with the AAA and has presided over commercial, construction, and employment matters. Amy is also certified as a FINRA arbitrator. What sets Amy apart from other trial lawyers are the skills she garnered from her experiences in the athletic world. A former Division I collegiate athlete and coach, Amy brings a dignified and measured aggressiveness and competitive nature to her legal practice. Clients want her leading and representing their interests as their outside legal counsel. Opposing counsel respect her legal acumen and her tenaciousness. As one of her clients put it, she is a force to be reckoned with. Based on her experience building winning teams, she has an innate ability to connect with clients. By listening to her clients, Amy identifies and understands the critical success factors before developing a game plan. What does a win look like for this legal dispute? Relying on her professional and athletic experiences, Amy develops a strategy to meet her clients' objectives in the most efficient way possible. She never gives up on meeting her clients' objectives and uses her intellect and intuition to alter the game plan when issues arise. Oh my goodness, Amy Stewart, I am, every time I talk to you, I'm just newly enthralled about how amazing you are.
I just want to do the color purple hands with you. It looks like I know you because we hung out together, but we only met during the pandemic, which is crazy.
Yes, it's crazy. And I tell you, every guest that I have had so far on the podcast, exactly the same way. These are not people, you are not people that I've met in person. And I tell you, it's I adore y'all more because of it.
So much for not being able to connect to people over Zoom. I thought that was, the whole issue back in March. I can't connect with people over this virtual platform. And you and I have built this whole relationship since last, I think, June or July.
Yeah, exactly. So for those listening who don't know, Amy and I were asked to be on an ABA panel together. And we were to talk about virtual mediation and virtual trial and what that meant and what it looked like. And so in advance of that, and I believe, I think we were asked in the summer to do something that was occurring in November.
That's how we originally met.
Right. Okay. And so we started off by trying to figure out if we were a good match and how we fit together. And so we had an initial meeting and conversation, and we were a perfect match.
Hit it off.
A perfect match. Totally hit it off.
Mm-hmm. No doubt.
And it was amazing. And so Amy and I have been working together ever since, and I cannot sing Amy's praises any louder, higher. I mean, nobody wants to hear me sing, so I don't really know what to call it. But I adore Amy. Amy is fantastic. And if you need an attorney to defend you, call up Amy. It's gotta call her.
Call me up.
Amy uses all of these sports themes that I don't understand, and I hate that. I hate that I don't understand the sports themes.
You're glam. You're glam. I'm sporty spice, and you're glam spice.
You are still glam though.
Well, not as glam as you with the flowers and whatnot, but you can.
All right. I won't argue with you there. But anyway, Amy needs to be called. Amy is amazing. So for those of you who don't know yet, Amy is one of the attorneys who argued the first virtual jury trial. And to me, that was the most fantastic thing that I had ever seen. And to know that it was a Black woman who had done that, I was like, oh, hey. And that was so exciting. And so then when I found out that I had been asked to work with you, I was just like extra excited, extra impressed. And then when I met you, and you're just like one of the coolest people that I've ever known in my life, that I've only met via Zoom.
Why isn't it? That's it.
It was even better.
Wait till we get together.
Oh, it's happening.
It's happening.
We have decided already that we are going to do a photo shoot. I'm coming out to see you. A photo shoot is happening. It's going to be fantabulous, because that's a word now.
It is. You can do whatever you want in 2020. So
Exactly. And so Amy and I spent 2020 working together, I guess the end of 2020, working together on so many things because we had just completely clicked. And I have full admiration and appreciation for the work that she is doing in the virtual trial space. She is making, I'm saying she because I'm talking to an audience, but it's really odd because I'm looking right at you and I just want to say you. But Amy is making the most incredible space for virtual trial. And I know that you and I have been working on a handbook about how you handle these things. And being the first to do it is, you can't do better than that. You're the first. You've got all of these issues. You've seen all of these issues come up. You had to figure out how to handle them on the fly, and nobody else can say that they had to do that. And then on top of it, being a Black woman in the space, my goodness, it had to have been so much more pressure. And instead of me just continuing to talk and sing your praises, Amy, I want you to talk a little bit about how the trial came to be, and like, what were you feeling when you realized, oh my God,
mhm.
I'm going to have to figure out how to change my process from in person to virtual, basically overnight.
Let's rewind. It's March. It's when all of us learned about COVID-19, and we were told that we had to go home. And in April, the court, I practice in Dallas County and Collin County, and the court in Collin County reached out and told us, hey, we want your case to be experimental summary jury trial. And we said, no, we're good. We're going to do it in July when the court ordered us to. And then all of a sudden we had a new order from the judge that said, you're going to do it in May. So we said, okay. And so I had to, and I represent companies and insurance companies. And so I had to go to my client and say, we're going to do this new experimental summary jury trial over Zoom. And you can imagine how the client responded to that.
Yes, I
So
can.
we had to come up with a plan to present to the client about, this is how we're going to do it. I had to practice it in front of her and other people to watch. And then we had to do it live over Zoom in May of this year. The one thing I've said from the beginning is that it's now a production. And so as I sat there and thought about, how am I going to present a case via Zoom and do voir dire, then present the case, question witnesses over Zoom? And we all were new to Zoom. I don't know about you,
Yeah.
but I mean, I may have had some Skype meetings, but not familiar with sharing and doing all the things on Zoom, all the wonderful things that you can do with Zoom now. So a lot of time went into trying to plan, how do we produce this summary jury trial to play live over Zoom? And it took a lot of time and a lot of practice, and we were able to get it done. But voir dire was extremely interesting because, like you and I started this out, how do you connect with someone that you not actually are in the same room with? And I had to do that with 30 some people that were all across Collin County in Texas.
I mean, I don't even know how you did that back then. Right. So yes, we were all starting to figure out that we needed to use Zoom in March.
Hmm.
And that's when you're trying to figure out how I'm going to do a trial this way.
Right. Remember back then, people, and I can only speak about what's happening in Texas, but people were pushing back on having even depositions over Zoom.
Right.
I mean, filing, motions for protective order in Dallas courts to stop Zoom depositions. And we were asked to do a Zoom summary jury trial, which is basically a summary of what the trial would look like, and you select jurors. And so there was just in our minds, like there are people in certain courts agreeing you can't go forward with a certain deposition, but we're having to try a case. It's non-binding. So, but do an experimental trying a case over Zoom.
I mean, can't imagine how stressful that was, because in March, I stopped mediating in March. It was March 16th. I will never forget that day. I went in complete lockdown and my firm closed. And I didn't know what we were going to do. And I was personally in panic mode. I am not ashamed to say that I was in panic mode. I didn't know how I was going to make a living. How am I going to keep paying for tuition? Like, what am I doing here? And then to see that people were moving on like in such a fashion was so inspiring. And I started to follow you, Amy. I mean, I don't know if I've ever told you this before, and as many times as we've spoken. I was stalking you, Amy, trying to figure out what you were doing. And it was amazing, the things that you guys came up with. And then in that process, and I can't remember what month it was, but I do remember talking about in an article that I could not fathom actually having a binding jury trial by Zoom for so many different reasons. But for you, doing the non-binding jury trial that early in the process, like you said, it was nerve-wracking and crazy and weird. And the amount of creativity that you had to, oh my God. I mean, I don't even know how you come up with that amount of creativity basically overnight.
And, people go, oh, it was non-binding. And as I said to a well-known litigator in Dallas, it's like, binding or non-binding, you got to be ready to play. Like, it's game time. So it's not like I went into the preparation for this summary jury trial different than I'd have went into it if it was a binding trial. It was the same thing.
Exactly.
And there was so much we did not know. Like, we did not know that it was going to be, the voir dire was going to be Zoomed live over YouTube. Like, we learned that like the day before.
Oh my gosh, really?
We didn't know. We were told we were not doing voir dire and that one of the judges was going to handle it. And then late on a Friday, we learned that we were going to do it. So we only had a couple of days, because it was on a Monday, I believe. We only had a couple of days before we had to figure out what this virtual voir dire looked like. And so there was a lot of unknown, but there was just, there was no choice. We just had to get ready. And I'm pretty happy with the final product. And you can see it on YouTube if you like. So.
Right. And I have seen it. And you were amazing. And I just, I want to stop and talk about that process, because when I have to talk about this virtual concept with my clients and potential clients, they're very concerned about how you can make meaningful connections with people virtually. If you've got, I would prefer to stay home. I will go and present in person. I will, but I prefer to stay home. And I know that a lot of other people would prefer to stay home. And frankly, my cases that are completely virtual and where everyone is comfortable in their own little bubble, wherever they've chosen to be, those have, I guess, better outcomes, better depending on what your idea of better is, but they have better outcomes. And so I would love to hear more about your experience specifically with voir dire and how you went about that. And so I'm assuming, I don't know. Did you have like the standard list that you would otherwise have of the potential jurors? Were you able to study them in advance? Did you know some of them would be appearing by Zoom? Did you know all of them would be appearing by Zoom?
Yeah, so we got just the normal way that we do it. We got a list of all the jurors and their basic information the morning of what I. So we were able to flip through and to see the types and to identify the types of folks that we would want to be on our jury. And so we were able to review all that stuff. We also learned that the court had spent a lot of time selecting the veneer panel of folks that we would be asking questions to. They wanted to know if they had a device, what type of device did they have? Did they have wireless internet access? Could they be undisturbed for 6 to 8 hours, depending on what the proceeding was going to be? Did they have somewhere to sit? That kids are not dogs, anything, any type of disruption. And so we knew going in that everyone was going to have a device and everyone was going to have internet access and be able to proceed with the proceeding.
That's fascinating, which of course brings up a whole other set of questions for me when we talk about bias and anti-bias and who's on the jury, right? So you knew in advance everyone had a device. So everyone had a device, which means they could afford a device. They could afford internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here in Georgia, our digital divide is more stark than in other parts of the country. We have a lot of rural places that are, less economically advantaged than many other places. And frankly, in Atlanta, we have the same types of problems. We've got people in certain pockets of Atlanta that have a lot more money and who have a lot more access to internet and high-speed internet, reliable internet, who may have children, but who also have access to nannies, be more receptive to having a nanny in your home during a pandemic and things like that, being able to keep your au pair in your bubble. And so we also know that the general research shows that people in general across the country, not just here in Atlanta where I physically reside, we know that these jurors trend rather toward younger, whiter,
Mm-hmm.
can I say maler? I don't know if that's
Male dominant.
but more male participants in the jury process.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you saw on your jury or no?
Yes, that's exactly what we saw. So Collin County, for people who aren't familiar, it's North Texas. It's north of Dallas County. It's Plano, Frisco, McKinney, places like that are wider. It's diverse out there. It's the type of place where people would have a device. Whereas if you were in Dallas County and you were picking from Southern Dallas, that's a lot of the research is found here as well, is that there was a federal judge, Chief Judge Barbara Lynn, that was trying to have a trial in federal court. And, it was an eye opener for many people when we all learned about what you're talking about, that divide, and that people south of the city either don't have a device or it's a pay by the minute device and, would not be able to have the type of ability to participate in a legal proceeding because they just don't have that internet connection with the rest of the world. And so that wasn't an issue that we had in Collin County for our summary jury trial. Now, maybe a month ago in Dallas County, they had their first binding virtual trial. And in that one, for the jurors, the veneer panel, everyone received a device. So they were able to participate and that the jury was, diverse in that situation. So there's all these vendors coming out with all this different ability to make sure that the jurors in a virtual proceeding are, represent everyone.
And that was, of course, going to be my next question. We've got vendors now who do these things, but that has to be expensive.
Mhm.
I don't know about Collin County or what's happening in Texas, but Georgia generally doesn't have the resources to make sure everyone can have that type of device or to insure that type of device in case it's not returned. How did that work?
In Dallas County, I think they had they had an envelope and that or a box, and then they received it, they opened it up, and then there's a they sent it back in. That's my understanding of how it happened. Collin County, everybody had their own device. There was only one person that was on her phone, and she wasn't selected for the jury anyway. But everybody else, it appeared, was on a laptop or a tablet.
Oh, that's interesting. Do we know if the lack of non-telephone device affected her selection?
No, we just didn't select her. No, I didn't have anything to do. I mean, it was one of the funniest parts of voir dire. I'm not sure if this was the part that was streamed. I think this was during the setup where she couldn't figure out how to make her screen vertical versus horizontal. And so literally at one point in the Zoom square, she was upside down and she was frustrated. Like, she was an older woman and she was frustrated. Like, I don't know how to make this work. And she just was like, and she turned, I mean, it was funny.
Oh, poor lady.
That was the only hiccup we really had.
The only other funny thing that I think that you've said is, I mean, you consistently pronounce voir dire incorrectly.
It's voir dire in Texas.
It's voir dire.
Voir dire.
Everywhere, it's voir dire.
You better watch us. We may become our own country. So
if you become your own country, I'll start saying voir dire.
Yeah. If you come here, you have to say voir dire.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll work on that.
You mediate cases in Texas and someone talks about what a jury's you're gonna have to be able to say to the litigant in voir dire, they're gonna ask X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
You have to do that to earn respect.
All right. A voir dire.
That's it. See?
I did it.
That's it.
Okay. Well, when I convince you to come and try cases in Georgia, are you ready to say voir dire?
If it's virtual and people are watching, I'll lose my Texas street cred if I come here and try to be all fancy with voir dire. I don't think so.
I love it.
I'm going to be like that crazy. Have you ever watched those Law and Orders where the attorney comes from Texas to defend someone, and they're always big old belt buckle and talking
in the boots,
talking like this. I may have to do that when I come to Georgia. So I, have my shtick, my Texas shtick.
You got to put on some boots. You have to buy the boots. Do you own the boots?
No, I own the boots. There are certain jurisdictions when I go there, I have on my boots. I have on my slacks and I have on my boots.
What kind of slacks do you wear to court with the boots?
Well, you wear blazer. We're having a little commercial break here. Blazer and a nice shirt and, slacks that are boot cut-ish. And I have my boots on.
Listen, I need you to send me a photo so that when I come to visit, I need to be en vogue. I
literally bought a pair of boots because I was going to have a trial in a jurisdiction where I knew the judge would appreciate my little hat tip to him that I'm wearing some boots in court, and the jurors would appreciate it.
I love it.
And what else? My feet would appreciate that I am wearing boots instead of stilettos. It's a win-win-win.
Nice boots are far more comfortable.
Oh yeah, Texas boots. Oh, they're so comfortable. Oh yeah, boots. Yeah.
Okay, writing note, buy boots.
Yep.
So before my trip to see you and buying the boots, we'll have to go over outfits.
Yep. No doubt. No doubt for our photo shoot.
Yes, for sure. Okay, so yes, we've gotten completely off field.
Back on topic, Winter.
Back on topic. You know I love fashion, but anyway, Amy. So when you're in your voir dire,
Hmm.
what is that like when it's virtual? Are you feeling, and especially because you didn't have a lot of time to figure out what that was going to look like, what did you do? What were you thinking? How did you immediately respond to that? Like, what was your first thought? Like, this is how I'm going to prepare for this because I don't know what else to do.
I started with my themes, like the themes that I would have at trial. You want to push those through voir dire and everything, opening. That's just what you do. And so I started with my themes. And then I thought about, okay, how in my personal experience can I tell stories about myself or my experience or current events that then I can ask a question in the context of that? Like, for example, in ours, there's a question of whether or not the plaintiff was being honest. And so I told a story about, I'm Sporty Spice. I told a story about a sports incident when we had to run a race and an upperclassman, instead of running the right route, she cut through a field instead of running on the street. And so I obviously wanted jurors that have a black and white position on honesty. You're either honest or you're not. I don't want people in the gray. And so what I did is I asked through the context of my experience. I didn't say, I don't think the plaintiff is being honest. I said, okay, let me share this experience with you. And I said, why did I have an issue with what she did? And then we were able to scan and see the juror number as well as their name. So then I could say, Miss Wheeler, what do you think about my story? And it makes them have to think instead of yes, no, yes, no, yes, no questions. Like I was against yes, no question. I had a rapid fire at the end to gather as much information as possible. But as I was building the relationship with the people, I wanted to share things about myself and then get them their feedback on it. And then I could say, did you hear what Miss Wheeler said? Mr. Jones, what do you think about that? Do you agree or disagree? So, number one, he's got to be engaged with me to hear what my question is. And then he's got to make sure he heard what you said. And so immediately I had everyone's attention because they felt like they were going to get called on in class.
Oh, yes. Brilliant. Right.
So, and then at the end, and then you can, because like here, you can see from the chest up, I could see when people were going, their facial expression, like they weren't tracking with me. And I would just say, Mr. Scott, what do you think? You don't look like you agree with Miss Wheeler. And then he just, and so I literally wanted to channel Oprah in a talk show. Back in the old days where she used to run up and down with the microphone.
Yes.
And you remember? And people so she would interview the person, right? And then she would come up and have her microphone and she would be like, excuse me, pardon me. You don't look like you agree. Tell me why you don't agree. And that's really what I did during the voir dire. And then at the end, it was raise your hand, raise your hand, raise your hand on certain things.
Now tell me, how many people did you have on screen at one time? I know that Zoom has since changed the number of people you can see on screen at one time and how you can name them and change all of that. But at the time, how did that work for you?
So I think we had 12. I think it was back at the very beginning where it was 4 across and 3 down. I'm thinking that sounds right because I'm trying to think of the one picture I keep seeing of us. I think it was 12. And so it was me on the 12 here. And then you know how you can and then you can scroll and have the others come up. And so then I had an associate and a paralegal that was watching the other folks. And we had my phone here and they would say, ask number 12 the question or follow up with number 12. And that's how I would know to go to the next screen. So they were looking at other screens.
Okay.
I was looking at the phone that I had, but then every now and then I would scroll because they couldn't see me doing it. And I'd go, all right, number 23, what do you think?
Okay, so you had support.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Helping you watch all the screens at one time.
Yeah. I think it was only 2 screens of folks, like up to 24 or something like that.
Okay. And do you think that that was sufficient? Well, sufficient. It worked for you. But do you think that you could have improved upon it? What would you have wanted to do? And so I should let you answer the question, but I have more to say. Okay, so now that Zoom has changed it so that you could see more people,
Yeah.
would it have been helpful to see more people at the same time? Or would it just have been overwhelming to see more people than you could see at that one time? And did you need to have the assistance? Because my concern as a mediator and as someone who is, pro everybody, really,
Hmm.
is it fair if there's a solo practitioner and they can only see one screen at a time? Or is it fair to see the 12 at once and have to scroll while you're talking? Is it fair to see, let's say, 24 or I don't know, 48, whatever that number is? Can you realistically look at all of those people? What would have been maybe the maximum number you think that you could have looked at? What would have been more helpful?
Hmm.
There's any kind of insight you could give on that?
I think that, well, if you think about in-person voir dire, right? You can get a room that's so big that you can't control. I mean, you can't visually connect with everyone. You can't ask everyone questions. So this phenomenon is not new to virtual proceeding. Happens when you're live as well. I would say I would want less people on the screen. I would want as much as possible, but I wouldn't want any more than 20. And the other part about, you kind of know how far you need to go to ask questions because you're never going to get past 25, right? If you're picking a jury of 6 and with the challenges, maybe a veneer panel of 20, 25 is all you need. So I think that if you get too many people on your screen, you're not going to be able to do the interactive connection that I was able to do because I could read it. They were all there. They all could see each other. And we were able to connect better than if now I've been in Higginbotham meetings and I feel like there's 60 people. I mean, and they're all like this. I mean, you can't.
Teeny tiny.
The thing that I liked is that the squares were bigger and I could engage with them by looking at their nonverbal communication. And then, if I saw that they weren't agreeing or they were smiling, or if they, as happens in live jury selection, if they looked like they wanted to say something, I could see that and go, you look like you want to say something. Tell me what you think.
Right. I kind of feel the same way about mediation, or maybe not even
Mm-hmm.
kind of. I definitely feel the same way about mediation. Because the way that I mediate, I focus very heavily on how the litigants are responding to the mediation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Obviously I'm concerned with the lawyers and how the lawyers are feeling and how the lawyers are interacting with their clients,
Mm-hmm.
and I get a lot of information from that.
Yeah.
But I know at the end of the day, it's that litigant or that litigant's representative that's going to make the ultimate decision,
Yeah.
right? And so I need to connect with that person. And when I'm doing that virtually, I can usually I can pin that person in Zoom speak and have a large picture of them, and I can see a lot more body language. I can see their facial reactions and things like that. And that is so helpful to me in going throughout the day. But obviously I'm spending a lot more time with that person than you are doing when you're doing your voir dire.
Mm-hmm. What
Voir dire.
Mm-hmm. It just rolls off the tongue. What
It rolls off the tongue now.
In mediation, let me ask you this. Do sometimes in mediation, and I'm on the defense side of things, sometimes I really want a mediator who can get to the plaintiff because, I'm not telling anybody anything new. Sometimes we believe from the defense side that if only the plaintiff can hear the offer or be connected with, I mean, it's important to me when I select a mediator, that mediator is not going to get blocked by plaintiff's counsel and can speak directly to the plaintiff. Tell me how you do that over Zoom.
It's usually pretty easy. I try to have a conversation with plaintiff's counsel about what a Zoom mediation should look like.
Mm-hmm.
And if the morning of, we show up and I can't see plaintiff,
Mm-hmm.
I have to ask that plaintiff be moved. For example, a lot of the time it's great because plaintiff will be at home
Mm-hmm.
and plaintiff's counsel will be at home. And I've got people in different locations and I can move people about and handle them the way that they need to be handled
Mm-hmm.
according to how I feel about that. But sometimes, and recently, for example, I had a situation where the attorney, the plaintiff, an associate, a tech guy, they were all in the room together.
Mm-hmm.
And it was complicated. And the attorney was closest to the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't help me.
Right.
And it doesn't help me because I understand, because I have been an attorney for so long, I
Mm-hmm.
understood what the attorney's points were. Like, I got it. I understand what you need and what you want.
Yeah.
What I can't understand if I can't see them
Mm-hmm.
is what the plaintiff wants.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time, I will have situations where the plaintiff is suffering.
Yeah.
They are suffering.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily just suffering because of this specific date of loss or
Mm-hmm.
this specific accident or
Yeah.
this specific breach of contract and what that meant. But there's also, like, my mother passed right after.
Oh, yeah.
And then my brother passed 3 months later. And then on the anniversary of the accident, I had another accident. And now it's a pandemic and I've lost my job. And so there are a lot of things for that plaintiff that are very negative. And all of that negativity is related in their mind to that date of loss.
Mm-hmm.
But bringing them to a point where they can understand that, yes, this was a terrible, tragic incident for you.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of that you associate with it is compensable.
Yeah.
But what we have to do, and the only way to get through it, is to really feel how that person is feeling. And I know that is something that is extremely hard, if not impossible, for the vast majority of mediators. It is also very hard, if not impossible, for the vast majority of plaintiffs' attorneys to even want to hear it. And so when you get to me and I'm determined that that's the conversation that we're going to have, sometimes I get pushback and I'll have to have the conversation with the attorney. It's like, no. I can tell from what your client is saying that there is a lot more going on here than this one incident. And you haven't been able to settle it for the value of this specific accident because they are relating it to all of these other things. And what we need to do today is to allow me, that third party, to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Get it out.
Then you tell them, like, this is what's reasonable.
Exactly. And I explain to them, okay, I understand that this is why you think your case is worth this much, but let me tell you exactly why the opposing party thinks that it's worth this much.
Let me flip that. So how do you go to the company, though, and like that information that you just shared? Because, I mean, obviously plaintiff's here, defense is here. What do you do to get the defense up?
Essentially the same thing. Because I spent most of my career as a defense attorney. And I know, after spending a lot of time with adjusters and other defense attorneys, we were human beings too.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of information that we aren't given because the plaintiff's attorney has determined that it's not relevant. And it's not relevant, right? It's not relevant to the accident, but it's things that happen to that person
Mm-hmm.
that affect how they feel and how entrenched in their position they are and why they can't move from that position. And so what we have to do is get to the bottom of why everyone is dug in. And we have that conversation in very open terms on both sides. And so I will say to the defense and the adjuster, I'll say, okay, I understand that this is not in your algorithm, but this is what's happening over there. These are the things. And if we want to get toward a resolution, this is how it's going to happen. If your goal today is to settle this case, you need to consider the emotional damage that has happened on the other side. Am I asking you to compensate them for that? No. But what I'm asking you is to give me the ability, give me the room to address those emotional issues. And, a lot of the time I get pushback. I don't want to address those emotional issues. I don't want to talk about the outstanding litigation loan that they got. Okay, but that litigation loan exists. That's something they're thinking about. They're worried about if they may die tomorrow, they're going to leave their wife with that. They're worried about that. That's bothering them. That's keeping this from settling. And so give me the space to have that conversation in my words, not your words. You don't have to say anything. Give me, the third party, the space to have those conversations. And we can start to get somewhere. And it goes in both directions. Because I have to not only express to the defense that these are the issues that are holding you up, and I understand that that has nothing to do with how you value this claim, but this is how the plaintiff, not the plaintiff's lawyer, the plaintiff is valuing that claim. That's why the plaintiff is dug in and entrenched. And I can have the same conversation with the plaintiff's attorney. Listen, these things are what are stopping you from being able to express to your client that the case is worth X.
Yeah.
And that's why they're not settling. Give me the space to let them have those conversations. Let me tell them why those things are not compensable. Let's figure out how we get them to move forward. What are the things that they can do? How do we make them feel whole? Can your client work? Let's find out. Are there other people in their life? Let's find out. Do they just want an apology? Let's find out. And especially in the context where that apology can come directly from me, it doesn't have to come from anybody else. That's beautiful.
It's like therapeutic mediation.
Exactly.
That's some new stuff there.
It is. My goal here really with what I'm doing with this podcast and with my mediation practice, I want to change the face. I want to change completely how people conduct their mediations. I want to change the expectations that lawyers have of their mediators. Because every single time that I have allowed a plaintiff to just lose their mind, yell, go off about everything that has upset you, we get down to it and we get a settlement.
Awesome.
Every time.
Look, this is some new stuff. I like it. I'm a trial attorney, but I know cases need to settle, and I do get frustrated when I go into virtual and especially live mediations where I have to cut my whole day and go sit somewhere and eat warm cookies at 3:00 to keep it going. And the mediator doesn't really get going until like 1 after the lunch session. I like this concept of really getting to the plaintiff and engaging in this. I think that this is brand new instead of just number. Because to me, what happens in that process, again, I'm on the defense side, but what happens in that process is the plaintiff isn't even involved.
Right.
They're not even engaged. What their needs are is, like you talk about, is not really being considered at a level like what it sounds like you're doing in your new way of mediating. I think that's great.
Thank you.
That's fine. I think it's really good.
Yeah. And
it's the first time we've ever really talked. I mean, our shtick is normally virtual hearings and trials or virtual mediation. Yes, no. We play back and forth.
Right.
But this is the first time I think you've ever really shared with me your process. And it's really, I know from a defense perspective, I like what you just said. I like that I know that I have a mediator that's not only talking about dollars and cents, but getting to the rub, the nub of, trying to get things resolved. Because I'm not one that likes to have a docket of cases sitting around for 2.5 years. So,
Right. Thank you. Thank you. And there's no reason to, because a lot of litigation is hurt feelings.
yeah, yeah,
A lot of it is.
the small cases and the huge cases. At the end of the day, it's so much of it is ego and having to try to get through the ego part of it to get to a number. And if you don't break through that, sometimes you can't even get to a resolution.
Absolutely.
And no one's happy when a case goes to trial. No one's happy to be there. They're not happy with their lawyers because they've spent so much on legal fees. No one's happy when they go to trial. It's exhausting. It takes a lot of time. I say all this, but I absolutely love it. But it's true. I love trial.
Yeah, trial can be really fun when you're the trial lawyer. I loved trial as a lawyer, but it is very ego driven. It is like, what am I going to be able to do? How am I going to present myself? What am I going to wear? What am I going to say? How am I going to navigate around the courtroom? Like, what dramatic pause can I take? Yeah, but that again, it's about ego. It is not about the parties, not about how do we settle that case. It is not about how do we save both sides money. It is not about how do we get that injured party or the party who truly believes that they were injured, whether or not they believe it. How do we get them to move on? How do we get them to feel whole? How do we get them to a place where their wants start to feel like their needs? And how do we get those actual needs met and get them to move on? I've done a short stint as a plaintiff's attorney, but I didn't have this concept in my mind at the time, but I would have plaintiffs who I knew had gotten a good deal. And then overnight they would be like, I don't think that was the best deal for me. And it would be because they still wanted to talk about the emotional stuff. They still wanted to talk about, well, what about this? And my reaction was always, I'm not a therapist. This is a great deal.
Right. Financially, it's a great deal. Yeah.
And I would try to refer them to a therapist. And so what I've been able to do, and of course I'm still not a therapist, but just listening to people, giving them the space just to talk, because I feel like, unfortunately, attorneys like me back in the day, we weren't listening.
Right.
We weren't listening, didn't know how to process all of their emotions. And I think that giving them the opportunity to have some of that cathartic release, I think that's huge.
I think it's great. I really like it. This is the first time we've ever really talked about it. There is so much in this new world that we find ourselves in, where we are supposed to consider mental health and wellness and people's emotions as a part of litigation. I think what you're doing is really kind of groundbreaking. I think it's going to take some time for people to understand that what you're bringing is a lot of value. So I think it's great. I'm kind of speechless about it. It's some new stuff here.
Thank you, Amy.
Kudos to you.
Thank you. This is definitely where I see my life's goal headed. I want to change how people approach mediation. I think we can do a lot better. By people. I genuinely think that most mediators really want to help.
Oh, I do too. And what I've said about mediators doesn't mean they don't want to resolve it. I just think there's different ways to resolve things. And if you're talking about someone that has physical injuries, emotional injuries, if you're not getting to the bottom of why they're upset, it's not rational to have a mediated discussion about resolution when you're not dealing with those issues.
Absolutely.
Well, Miss Winter, I got to go arbitrate.
Yes. Girl. I love me a well-rounded Amy. You have been wonderful. I appreciate you so much. You are one of my dearest friends, and I've probably said this to everyone that I've interviewed so far, but it is true again. I met you during a pandemic. We have never met in person. We have only met by Zoom, but you have been a strong supporter. I strongly support you.
Yep.
I love you dearly. We have worked together many times. I have your back. I know you have mine.
Absolutely.
I'm here for you forever. And I am ready for that Texas photo shoot.
I'm ready. Get you some boots. We're going to have a good time. Get those vaccines and come on down.
Yes, get the vaccines and get the boots.
Come on down and get your boots.
Do I need a hat?
And your hat. And a buckle.
And a buckle. I'm going to need some help. Maybe you could send me some links.
We're with you. Look, just come on down. Get your 2 shots and come on down and we'll take care of you in Texas.
Okay. I love it. Thank you so much, Amy. I appreciate you.
I'll see you later.
Thank you for listening to the Mediate Now. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Music and audio editing provided by Encompass Podcast Studio. Take our advice. You will improve your entire life.